Okay, so I'm sure now you can see the let's say the other topic that we are going to discuss now. And here we mainly are going to talk about global considerations that do impact all strategic decisions. You can see now how, for example, with COVID, it was a global phenomenon, but how the war, for example, in Ukraine, which happens only in one part of the world, how that affects actually us globally. Inflation everywhere, financial problems, oil prices going high, problems with, I don't know, with getting essential groceries to live, so this shows how interconnected the world is nowadays. And all these global considerations we do impact actually all strategic decisions that the organizations will take anywhere internationally. So here, what we're going to discuss is mainly the nature of doing business globally. This will include how language affects labor union issues. We're going to also talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of going globally or going internationally, doing business internationally. Also, we're going to talk about some of the main challenges that the organizations do face when they, some of these global challenges, and why this is actually related to strategy and why this is a strategic issue. And we're going to talk a little bit about the tax rates and tax inversions as strategic issues and how they, let's say, affect businesses internationally. So when we talk about this particular topic, we're going to also, although I don't find it relevant, especially nowadays, because we are quite aware of the different business cultures. However, we might shortly compare and contrast American business culture versus foreign business culture, and understand why this is, why this might affect strategic management. We'll touch a little bit on Mexico, Japan, China, and India, if we have enough time, as well as business climate in different countries internationally, and why that might affect actually strategic management. So this is the comprehensive strategic management model, and this is what we will be mainly discussing today. So when we talk about the global and international issues, as I said earlier, there are global considerations that do impact virtually all strategic decisions. Boundaries, limits of countries can no longer define the limits of our imagination. You can see yourself how interconnected we are. So even in this classroom, we are people from different countries around the world, brought together, having a class, not being present face to face. So you feel the same like you are being in one single class. And this is mainly due to the latest developments in, let's say, information communication technology that actually have, in a way remove these boundaries of countries, that no longer limit our imagination. So that's why to see and to appreciate the world, the perspective of other people internationally, this is something that has become a matter of survival for each and different business. That's why when we talk about the underpinnings of strategic management, they hinge on managers to gain an understanding, of not only competitors, but also markets, prices, suppliers. You should have knowledge also about different distributors, governments, government policies, government decisions, rules, regulations, creditors as well. You should understand your shareholders as well as, especially nowadays, what's crucial is to understand your customers worldwide or internationally. That's why the price and quality of the products and services that the companies do provide to the customers. That's something that must be competitive, not only on a local basis, but that should be competitive on a worldwide basis, especially nowadays when we have other options like going online. So why you would go and buy, for example, to the shop, something that's quite expensive, let's say here in Switzerland, when you get the same thing, you can order from AliExpress, for example, and the same can be delivered to you here in Switzerland. So I do the same. So I know the same thing here, I should pay like 50 francs and I get the same for 20. It takes a little bit of time to deliver, but when it's not something urgent, people do divert to these other options that they have to save. That's why, these local shops, they should take into consideration also the fact that people can go and can divert to worldwide businesses to get whatever they need. So they do not only compete nowadays with these small local shops, but they do compete also with these online shops that are available internationally. That's why the price and quality of companies' products and services must be competitive on a worldwide basis and not just on a local basis, because shareholders expect substantial revenue growth. That's why doing business globally is one way you can achieve that, because you get access to much more customers. And usually this is one of the main reasons why in certain cases the companies decide to go internationally. When we talk about the nature of doing business globally, only this, especially nowadays, it's much higher. The export of goods and services from the United States, it's only 13.5% of U.S. gross domestic products. So exporting, what happens not only within the United States largely determines the strength and economic recovery. So as a percent of gross domestic product, GDP, for example, exports comprise 45.6% of the German economy. So Germany exports actually much more in these cases. For example, China exports 22.6% of their GDP. Singapore, on the other side, 187% of their economy. So that shows that doing business globally is one way that the organizations can, let's say, survive or can gain access to much more customers. When we talk about this world market, this is something that has emerged from what we previously got to know national markets. And as you can see, especially nowadays, the climate for international business today is more favorable than in the past. So you would never think of, let's say, having this kind of business programs, for example, sold to different countries, let's say, internationally. So in the past, you could think only of having some people, even me myself, I remember previously, let's say, in my country or here in Switzerland, you would not have, let's say, that much diversity in the classroom. So you would only have local people, let's say, attending a particular program. However, nowadays, it's mainly due to this emerging global market that you have, people from different markets. I remember during the time I was doing my master's in corporate communication with the University of Lugano here in Switzerland, which was a program in economics and marketing. Actually, we only had like 2 or 3 Swiss people in the class. Many of us were coming from different parts of the world. So this is what actually the internationalization of business, international business nowadays provides to many businesses. So it's more favorable than it used to be in the past. As I said earlier, it's mainly mass communication, the development of technology that have created important patterns of consumption in different in diverse cultures internationally. And this shows that and tells many companies, that they may find it difficult to survive by relying only on the domestic market. That's why in certain cases they decide to go international. When we talk about globalization, we hear it a lot on a daily basis. So it's mainly a process of doing business worldwide. So strategic decisions are made based on global profitability of the company rather than just domestic consideration. Usually when we talk about global strategy, what the organizations usually seek is to meet the needs of customers, not locally, but worldwide or internationally. And they strive to achieve that by with the highest value at the lowest cost possible for these customer. And what that means, I'm sure if you have not taken the international business course, that's extremely nice course that I don't know, you're gonna take it. That shows the different means on how you can, let's say, you can do business internationally. You might locate production in different countries with lowest labor costs, or where you can find abundant natural resources that you can get only from that particular country. Also, what you can do is you can locate research and complex engineering centers where you can find skilled scientists and engineers, so it's easy, you get closer to them. Or you can locate marketing activities close to the markets to be actually served. When we talk about global strategy, so the same like this strategy, however, the aim here changes. And this is when we design, produce, and market products with global needs in mind, instead of considering only the individual countries alone. So when we define strategy, we only focus on let's say particular market. When we talk about global strategies, we do not consider individual countries alone, but we do have in mind the global needs that customers do have, let's say, internationally. And when we talk about global strategy, it's an integration of actions against competitors into a worldwide plan. So we take into consideration competition. We would like to achieve competitive advantage in a global plan rather than on particular countries alone. That's why, especially nowadays, there are global buyers and sellers, and the payment, transmission of money or transmission of information across different countries is much easier than it used to be. You can use, I don't know, Apple Pay, you can use Visa, MasterCard, different kinds of payment methods, PayPal, to easy make payments and transfer your goods to any country internationally. Please do mute your mic unless you would like to speak, so that we do not disturb actually the rest. So due to this global nature of doing business nowadays, especially, we have lots of multinational corporations or multinational companies, and usually these are the organizations that do conduct business operations across national borders. So this is what we call international firms or multinational corporations. You have lots of them. So I'm sure you have heard of Nestle, for example. It's a Swiss company. You find it internationally. Apple, for example, Samsung, lots of other companies. When we talk about the strategic management process of these organizations, that's conceptually the same for multinational companies as well as for the domestic companies. However, when we talk about the process of strategic management, it's much more complex for international companies. And this is mainly as a result of different variables as well as relationships that do exist. There are social, cultural, as we explained earlier, demographic, environmental, political, governmental, legal, technological, as well as competitive opportunities and threats that face multinational corporations that they have to take into consideration. And also there are a number of complexities or number of different factors that do increase dramatically with the number of products that the organizations do produce and the number of geographic areas that they serve. So the more products you produce, the more customers you serve, the more complex the strategic planning of these organizations. Also, it requires more time and effort. Also, geographic distance can play a role in these cases. Cultural as well as national differences can play important role in the strategic planning. That's why multinational corporations do face unique and diverse risks. It can be expropriation of assets in different countries, losses because of currency exchanges, especially, for example, you can see nowadays how the exchange rate, for example, fluctuates. There are also unfavorable foreign court interpretations of contracts and agreements that can harm these multinational corporations. So all these are, particular aspects that do affect the way these multinationals organizations do business. However, there are particular, let's say, advantages of doing business internationally. And the first thing is that you can gain new customers for their products. So now, and just take, for example, if you are based only in Switzerland and you have with the latest census around 10 million of people. And now imagine you going globally and how many new customers for your products you can get. Also, foreign operations can absorb excess capacity, reduce unit costs and spread economic risk over a wide number of markets. They can allow you to establish low-cost production facilities in locations. That's why, for example, we have Nike. They produce much more, for example, in Indonesia now, Sri Lanka, for example. They get cheap or low-cost production facilities, cheap labor as well. Also, competitors in foreign markets may not exist. So you move to another market because those competitors that you have in the local market do not exist. So it's easy for you to do business in another foreign market. And this competition may be less intense than in your domestic market. So you can leverage this particular benefit that this foreign or multinational market offers to you. Also, if you move to foreign operations, you can get reduced tariffs, also lower taxes, as well as favorable political treatment. Usually, countries do provide this in order to attract, let's say, more foreign investments to their countries. On the other side, if you engage in a joint venture, for example, that can help you learn the technology, culture, as well as business practices of other people. This is another advantage that you get. You can also make contacts with potential customers, other suppliers, creditors, as well as distributors. On the other side, by moving internationally, you gain economies of scale, and this is achieved only by operating in a global rather than solely domestic market. So by engaging in larger scale of production and better efficiencies, this will allow you to have higher sales volume as well as lower price offerings that you can offer. And the last benefit or advantage that you will get by doing business globally is that the power and prestige of the company in the domestic market will be significantly enhanced if you start to compete globally. And the moment you have this prestige enhanced, that way you, let's say, improve your negotiation power, not only among creditors, but also among suppliers, distributors, and other important groups. However, the availability, depth, reliability of this economic as well as marketing information in different country, it's not the same. So there are differences. So industrial structure is different. Business practices from country to country are different. However, even the number and the nature of regional organizations is different from country to country. That means that doing business globally, doing business internationally has particular advantages, because these potential disadvantages of initiating, continuing, or expanding business across national borders is something that the organizations, may face. As I said earlier, these foreign operations could be seized by nationalistic factions, for example. It depends. For example, when you move to China, you have very centralized, economy, everything controlled by the central government. So, that's the risk that you face. Also, when you move internationally, you confront different and often little understood social, cultural, demographic, environmental, political, governmental, legal, technological, economic, as well as competitive forces when you do business international. That's why, for example, we conduct the PESTEL analysis. So you analyze not only the external environment in that particular country before you decide to make a decision on which country you would like to let's say, to go internationally and do business. You're going to see when you take the international business course. I don't know if you have taken, because I'm not aware of the plan. You see how, for example, the countries and how the companies use different data, different matrices to decide on how, on whether to move into a particular country. What kind of, let's say, criteria they apply before they decide, to do business. I think the World Bank produces a report called easy to do business. So they tell you which country is easy to do business. So how fast you can, for example, establish a company. So, for example, establishing a business school here in Switzerland, there is a particular process, particular rules and regulations for you to establish. Doing the same thing in another country might be easier, might be more difficult. There are particular problems like corruption that you may face. So all this is something that you will confront when you decide to move to a different country. And this is something that you should far in advance take into consideration before you let's say you decide to engage in doing a business, let's say in a particular country. Also, weaknesses of competitors in foreign lands, are in certain cases overestimated. Also, strengths are overestimated. That's why it's important that you keep yourself informed about the number and the nature of competitors in all these different markets when you decide to do business internationally. As we said, language, culture, value systems are different among countries, which can create barriers to communication and problems when you manage people. I always mention as an example the difference between American and, for example, German or Swiss German culture. There is an article, a research done on why, for example, German culture is much more, let's say, productive and efficient. For example, when they give you an exercise to do it, even your teacher, they would, your supervisor at work, he would say it would be nice to have it, for example, by tomorrow. When they say it would be nice to have it by tomorrow, that means that even if you don't have it, so it's not that strict, you still have some more time. Because they say it would be nice. However, in German or Swiss, they would say strictly, I want it by tomorrow. So you know that you have no other option, So that's culture, that's language, So in certain cultures, they might find it rude, but that's how they do things, And that's why it's important to know these particular cultures of doing business, work culture before you move to different countries. That's why, for example, many companies, before they send, let's say, I don't know, mainly managers to different countries, they provide also courses for them. They prepare them before they send them on a mission or to work in other countries. Also, gaining an understanding of regional organizations is difficult. For example, in Europe, we have the European Economic Community, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the International Financial Corporation. Gaining understanding is difficult. However, you need this kind of understanding if you would like to do business internationally. And dealing with two or more monetary systems actually can complicate your international business operations. You will learn during the international business class on how, for example, exchange rate, when you do business in two different countries, when you sell services in a different currency and then, move the money to, let's say, to the main account in the, let's say, headquarters, how that actually can provide not only benefits, but in certain cases also, let's say, losses for the organization. For example, now Swiss franc is much, let's say, stronger than euro. Now, now imagine if you have sold, let's say, services earlier, let's say in euro, and nowadays actually you get much less income in Swiss francs, because let's say now 100 euro, I checked today's 94 Swiss francs, for example. Whereas I think 1 month ago, with 100 euro, you would get like 103 Swiss francs. So this is how these, let's say, exchange rates do affect, the organizations when they have to deal with two or more monetary systems, and that can complicate, let's say, their international business operations. Especially nowadays, organizations do face lots of challenges, especially global challenges. And these are some of these global challenges, that the organizations face. The economy in America is becoming much less American. So you have other, let's say, companies, international corporations, that now are operating in the United States. Also, China and India are becoming important, let's say, international economic players. China, also the residents of India nowadays, they provide potential for these American companies to be attracted to move to this particular market. Also, world economy and monetary systems are emerging. Markets are shifting rapidly, and in many cases, we have converging, in terms of tastes, trends, as well as prices. So the tastes of people internationally are, seems like they are converging each day more and more. So more and more countries around the world are also welcoming foreign investments as well as capital. However, many countries, they are quite protectionist, and this is something that can affect strategic planning of these organizations. I'm sure many of you know protectionism refers to countries imposing tariffs, taxes, and regulations on companies outside the country, and they do this to favor their own companies and their own people. So if you are a foreign company, you may suffer from this kind of protectionism, and the taxes that these governments do impose to foreign companies in order to, let's say, to favor their own, let's say, companies. Also, tax rates is something that we need to look at before we decide to do business internationally. Tax rates in countries are important, especially when you plan to do strategic decisions. Whether you would like to build manufacturing facilities in one country, retail stores, or if you would like to buy another firm. Because high corporate tax rates usually deter investments in new factories and also provide strong incentives for corporations to be able to avoid but also evade taxes. And if you look at this table that we have here, we can see that corporate taxes, they vary considerably across countries and companies. So if you can see the table that we have here, United Arab Emirates, they have 55% tax rate, Chad 40, USA 35, and you can see the list all the way down. As you can see, as you can note, some countries do have flat taxes, which triggers a surge for indirect investment in these cases. When we talk about the United States, usually it's required that companies pay the difference between lower foreign taxes as well as the US corporate tax rate of 35% when they would like to bring their international earnings home. So if you have a company operating or a branch abroad and you would like to bring your earnings home, so then you have to pay the difference between lower foreign tax and the US corporate tax rate, which is 35%, because you have paid, let's say, I don't know if you pay, let's say in Japan, for example, is 25.50% earnings tax. And if you would like to bring that earning in the United States, and in the United States is 35%. So that difference is something that you will have to pay in the United States. Different countries might have different rules, different regulations. So you will have to watch. It's important to mention, let's say, some particular business culture differences between the United States and other, countries. Especially in the United States, to be successful, you must to be successful internationally in world markets. And if you are a US manager, it's important to obtain a better knowledge of not only historical, but cultural as well as religious forces that motivate and drive people in other countries. That's why nowadays, actually, many individuals do go to study abroad, because that's where this kind of knowledge you get. So if you would, let's say, study only in Malaysia, if you would study only in Vietnam, for example, in one particular country, you will not get or understand these differences if you do not engage in a classroom, for example, internationally, or somewhere in Switzerland, where you meet people from different parts of the world, have class discussions on how, on these particular historical, cultural, religious aspects that can arm you with the necessary knowledge to be able to become a global manager and be able to operate, let's say, with the company which is based, let's say, internationally. You can easily understand this particular diversity that especially nowadays the globalization provides to us. Also for multinational companies, knowledge of business culture variation across countries can be essential if they would like to gain and sustain competitive advantage. That's why companies nowadays, promote this kind of diversity in their companies, because it's important that they do understand this, business culture variation. And many of them, they do consider diversity of their workforce to be essential competitive advantage that they can get them to outperform, let's say, their competitors. That's why nowadays students with international experience, students obtaining international degree, are favored compared to those that actually do not have this kind of knowledge or, let's say, understanding of business culture variations that are prevalent internationally. Here are particular cultural pitfalls that you can read and get to know, to help you to become a better manager. And as you can see, all these pitfalls actually are based on particular cultures that, let's say, are prevalent in different countries around the world. So, for example, let's just mention here, in China, for example, last names are written first, compared, for example, to EU, when you start with your first name, that goes with a second name. In Japan, for example, direct eye contact is impolite, whereas in Europe, avoiding eye contact would be impolite. So these are, let's say, particular cultural pitfalls that you should take into consideration, and that can help you to be a better manager. So when you deal with, for example, a Japanese employee or Japanese manager, you know how to handle this kind of interactions compared to when you have to deal with a European manager. For example, when you dine with someone, with the client, for example, from Malaysia, maybe our Malaysian friends here in the class can confirm that it's maybe rude to eat with your left hand, for example, because I think this is religiously based, because you are supposed to eat, especially in Malaysia, because of Islam, you are supposed to eat with your right hand. So it might be a little bit impolite and rude. So these are particular things, you know. However, these things you can learn or you can study quite easy nowadays. You have access to all these kind of information, lots of websites online. So before you embark, before you engage, have a meeting with a particular client, it's important that you study the culture of these people. In terms of the managers, you know, there are particular differences between US and foreign managers, and that's mainly based on their culture. For example, Americans, they place an exceptionally high priority on time, so they view time as an asset. Many foreigners actually place more worth on relationships. So that's the difference between high and low context cultures, you know. Also, personal touching and distance norms, you know, this social space differs from countries internationally. So usually when we talk about Americans, they stand about 3 feet from each other when they carry on business conversations. However, let's say Arabs, Africans, you know, they stand about 1 foot apart. So they are more close. So to get close, even European culture is the same like the American culture. So especially in the beginning, you know, you should respect this kind of social distance. So you should not get that closer to the client or to the individual that you are doing business. Also, there are changes in the family roles and relationships in different countries. So we have, you know, countries that are more collectivist, countries that are individualistic. So that will affect how people treat other people. Also, business and daily life in some societies are governed by religious factors. So this is something that you know, you have to take into consideration. For example, doing business in Saudi Arabia, you should expect that people go for prayer. For example, on Friday, they don't go to work. For example, in Malaysia, you have in different offices, you have also room for prayers and the likes. So you should, you know, these are business and daily life, you know, that shows that it's different in different societies, which is governed by the religious factors. For example, you don't shake hands. For example, if you do business in Saudi Arabia with a female, for example, client or business partner, let's say. Also, time spent with family and the quality of relationships are important in some cultures compared to their personal achievement and accomplishments. So in certain countries, you know, work-life balance is different. So people would prefer more time to spend with family and the quality of relationships that they have with them compare that their personal achievement at work or the accomplishments that they get, in the workplace, which is actually a priority to the U.S. manager, but might not be a priority of people coming from, let's say, a more collectivist culture that actually would be more interested into, let's say, spending much more time with their family, quality of relationship with their family compared to the personal achievements in these cases. However, there are particular things that people, might be similar, from culture to culture. However, for example, many cultures do value modesty, team spirit, collectivity, let's say, compared to United States. As I said earlier, they are much more individualistic, and this is much more important and much more important to the people or managers coming from the from such particular culture. So if you are a manager, let's say, coming from this collectivist culture, you should understand someone coming from an individualistic culture. The same, a US manager should understand people that come, let's say, from a collectivist culture. So these people might give their best, not as an individual, but rather when they work as a team, when they work in a more, let's say, collectivist environment in these cases. Also, in terms of punctuality, punctuality is a valued personal trait when you conduct businesses in the United States. However, it's not something that you find in other societies. For example, I have noticed myself, especially in Middle East, Saudi Arabia, it's okay to be late for a meeting. However, that's something that would, that would be considered extremely rude, to someone here in Switzerland, because here even trains are never late. It happens sometimes, and even they less than if they are late for less than 1 minute, you see people, pissed off, starting to complain. So now imagine if you are late for a meeting, for half an hour, 25 minutes, 1 hour. So that would not be considered polite. Eating habits, we discussed it earlier, different from country to country. Rules of etiquette do vary. That's why, as a manager, if you go to do business in China, you will have to, for example, get to know these rules of etiquette, because you will have to deal with people. For example, Americans, they often do business with individuals they do not know, compared to many business persons in many other cultures. That's why, as we said earlier, some particular cultures, they first would like to build relationship and then they start doing business. However, Western cultures, they can even start doing business with individuals that they do not know. So they do not focus on a relationship rather than on getting work or getting business done, compared to, let's say, many Eastern cultures, Middle East cultures, where more emphasis is put on relationship rather than doing business. Also, the communication across cultures is different. That's why intercultural communication is quite important. How you communicate with people from country to country, it's extremely important, because how you communicate in certain cases might become rude, intrusive to someone else that come from other cultures. Like body language, gestures that you use can offend other people. For example, Americans, sometimes they come across as being quite intrusive, manipulative, and garrulous. And this, in a way, may reduce their effectiveness in how they communicate. Because especially in the United States, managers are much more action-oriented compared to their counterparts around the world. So, as I said, managers, they prefer more to build this relationship before they engage in this kind of before they give orders. So they rush to appointments, conferences, meetings, and then they feel that Only that way they feel that the meeting has been productive. For example, managers in the United States, in the West is the same. They use blunt criticism. They ask prank questions and they make quick decisions. For other cultures, this might be shocking, for example. I don't know if we would have to go, but quickly we can touch on this. For example, different business cultures that are prevalent in different or across countries internationally. For example, in Mexico, employers do seek workers who are agreeable, respectful, and obedient. So they do not expect employees to be innovative, creative, and independent. So they would like people that obey. That's why the employers are mainly paternalistic. So they do provide workers with more than a paycheck, but in return, they do expect allegiance. So they expect that they are agreeable, respectful, and obedient. Compared to Japan, we have a different business culture there. So they place great importance on group loyalty and consensus. And this is a concept that they call war. Usually, when Japanese, they are confronted with disturbing questions or opinions, that these people, they tend to remain silent. And you can see that this is quite different when we talk about, for example, US or Western managers. In China, we have a totally different culture. So they rarely do business with companies or people that they do not know. I mentioned it earlier. Compared to the US, they prefer to first build a relationship and then they engage in business. So they spend lots of time into this pre-business initial stage when they build this kind of relationship. Also, the position on the organizational chart is extremely important in business relationships. So you get the respect based on the status that you have on the organizational chart. Arriving late to a meeting is an insult, and on the other side, could negatively affect your relationship that you're going to have with the Chinese business partner. Also, meetings require patience because mobile phones ring frequently, and conversations tend to be boisterous. However, in Europe, it's extremely impolite to open your phone to make a call during the meeting that you have with the client, or so that might consider rude compared to a Chinese business culture where it's required that you have this kind of patience because of mobile phone ringing. On the other side, in India, we have another kind of business culture. So you don't expect someone in India to say you, let's say, straightforward no, which is the case in many Western cultures. So they do not like to say no, either verbally or non-verbally. And because they do this because they don't want to disappoint you. So instead of disappointing you, they often that will say that something is not available, or I don't know, will give you a particular response that they think you want to hear, or in a way will vague you, so you don't feel like disappointed by saying like straightforward no. So this is the same answer that when you receive when you get rejected for a job position. They don't say no, but they put a whole big email, like, I don't know, provide different reasons instead of saying no. So in a way, they they would like to smooth the disappointment that you're gonna feel when they say no to you. Also, the same, because I said this is a particular culture that we find in the East. So Indians, the same, they prefer to do business only with those that they have established relationship and mainly built upon mutual trust and respect. Again, even here, punctuality is important. And Indians, they generally do not trust the legal system, and someone's word is often sufficient to reach an agreement, which is different compared to Europe. Here, let's say, someone's word is never sufficient. There is always, you have to always, provide something in a written form. So there is always a notary, I don't know, a lawyer involved in this particular cases. So, as I said earlier, the business culture in different countries internationally, business climate varies from country to country. That's why World Bank and International Finance Corporation, they do annually rank 189 countries in terms of their respective ease of doing business. This is something that I discussed or I mentioned earlier. And they rank these countries on the how easy it is to start a business, to deal with a construction permit, register property, to get credit, to protect investors, to pay taxes, to trade across borders, to enforce contracts, to resolve insolvency, and to get, let's say, electricity. Africa's business climate, it's different, and this climate actually is changing from time to time. So now doing business in Europe is different compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. And recently we have 25 African countries that did have, let's say, democratic elections. So that tells that actually business culture is changing and is becoming better and better. However, 2 decades ago, you would have only 3 African countries that were considered actually democracies. On the other side, currencies are stabilizing in Africa. Many African and non-African companies are also launching operations in Africa due to the rapidly growing middle class in these countries. And the World Bank is showing that food demand across Africa will double or has doubled already, which is actually a potential for companies that would like to do businesses in these countries. Business climate in China is also different, and according to International Monetary Fund, the world's most populous country has overtaken the United States as the world's #1 economic powerhouse. For example, in 2014, the economic output of China was 17.6 compared to US, which was 17.4. And experts have predicted this monumental shift in economic power for years. However, this is something that came much faster. Maybe all these changes that are happening, wars, so they might be in line of this economic power that actually China got and obtained. I don't find this is relevant in these cases. India is quite important, especially nowadays, because they are becoming an important international economic player. And for example, we see their GDP going up, and this makes it the world's fastest growing large economy. And the first time that India's growth rate has exceeded China since the 1990s. So they did exceed even China's. We don't have Shinzo Abe anymore because he was murdered. Actually was quite successful in, let's say, reviving the economy of Japan. And the numbers show that actually there are much more improvements. We have students from Vietnam, and we see that there are lots of business opportunities in Vietnam. We see many people, I know friends from Switzerland moving to Vietnam to do business. And that's mainly because of the opportunities that the Vietnamese business climate does provide. Internet penetration has grown to 44%. You have 90 million of people, which is 12% compared to a decade ago. And that's actually a huge potential if you would like to do business. Unlike other communist countries, Vietnam is actually booming for business, and it provides, let's say, huge opportunities, as well as the market for e-commerce in Vietnam is quite successful. Now imagine it generates 4 billion in revenue annually. So there are, lots of opportunities if you would like to engage in a business, among, in such a big country that offers lots of opportunities. So that was all with regards to this second topic